Good afternoon for those in the US and whichever part of the world you may be. Welcome to DNA Behavior's 8th series webinar, and this is all about virtual teams. This is our 4th series as we discuss about relationship-focused teams. So we will discuss what works best for them, what their opportunities are. As you know, our relationship-focused teammates, they're the ones that are generally focused on the well-being of the entire team. And with that, my name is Lisa Travis. For those who don't know me yet, I'm DNA Behavior's business development analyst, and I've been in the company for almost 3 years now. My profile is an influencer, and I'm half results focused and half relationship focused. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to know your own profile, I'll be announcing how to get it at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for that. And now let's focus on Nikki. She'll have her introduction.
Thanks,
Nikki?
Lisa. My name is Nikki Evans, and I'm responsible for training and program delivery here at DNA. And I'm excited to talk to you today about our results focused, and we'll learn a little bit more about how you can tell where you are on that scale. Last week we talked about results focus, and so if you're interested in that, you can always get to our previous recording, and we'll talk about that later as well. I'll hand it back to Lisa for a couple more things.
Thank you. So just a few house rules before we start. We've muted everyone to avoid background noises and chatter. So if at any point during the webinar you have a question, just type it down. The chat boxes are found at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try our best to answer those as we go along. We also have 3 poll questions. You know, this is a just light temp check, so we would know where you're at in terms of working remotely. And the webinar is recorded, and I will be the one to send the slides and the link to the recording. The soonest possible time that I will send that will be tomorrow morning. And lastly, there is a survey at the end. So when you leave the meeting, you will be prompted to take the survey. We really encourage you to provide feedback, as we would love to improve the quality of our webinars, you know, to serve your satisfaction. So please answer the survey. And with that, let's get started. Everyone, all ears to Nikki.
All right, I'm going to throw it right back to you though, real quick for a poll question, because I think you've got the poll, Lisa.
So what do you miss most about working in an office? A, getting fast results. B, connection with teammates. C, I don't miss the office. D, I don't work in an office. So let's get those questions. There you go. Let's just wait for a few more seconds. Still waiting for, okay, I think we're almost done. Here you go with the results.
Great. So it looks like a lot of people missing out on connection with teams, or not in offices, or not really missing the office that much. So great. That will we'll definitely talk a little bit more about that connection with teammates and what that looks like soon. So I want to start first with just a quick introduction to our DNA profile styles, if you're not familiar with them. And I'll do that kind of by giving you a little bit in these quadrants. And here to the left, you will see profiles that are more results oriented, and to the right, profiles that are more relationship oriented. And then if you look at this line here in the middle, the profiles above this line tend to be faster paced. They will speak more quickly. They will be willing to speak up more quickly, share their ideas out loud a little bit more before they're even fully formed, where the folks with profiles that are below this green line will tend to be more careful about how they speak, will tend to be more precise, and will tend to be more thoughtful before they're willing to speak up. They may not initially volunteer an idea right when a new thing comes up, but we'll want to have give some thought to it and be sure that they're being that they're correct about it. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk more about those styles that are on this relational side. But again, each of these names, what we do at DNA, we have a behavioral profile that helps people understand what their style is. And while we give you 10 labels to help group characteristics together in an easy to understand and give us some language to talk about, there are trillions of combinations of profiles that you can get with our discovery tool. And so while you might be grouped into a category, like Lisa mentioned, she's an influencer, my profile style is an initiator, but my initiator profile and our founder Hugh Massey's initiator profile are very different. And so your experience of each of us as individuals would be very different, although we do share some commonalities that put us in the initiator category together. But today we're going to really focus on these more relational styles. So the engagers, the community builders, the relationship builders, the facilitators, and the adapters. Because adapters and influencers fall in the line between results and relational, we included influencers in our program last week on the results focus, and we're including adapters this week in our relational category. So what we're going to do is talk to you about, and so what this means is that for community builders and engagers, they're going to tend to be the ones that are faster to share ideas, will be the ones that think out loud, will maybe start talking before they've really fully thought of what they're going to say. So they will tend to think out loud and be usually very connective and engaging with other people, very outgoing. Where people that are in the relationship builder, facilitator, adapter category will also be very relational, may prefer one-on-one relationship to one-to-many relationships, like the engagers and community builders may be more comfortable with. They will tend to be softer in tone and will tend to be a little bit more thoughtful before they speak up. But relationship and maintaining relationship would be very important to all of these profiles. So we're going to start off with a little case study of the strengths and struggles of a relationship focused leader that we worked with, where the leader was a team of a highly ranked organization that was a very relational culture. The culture of the organization tended to get things done through relationship. Camaraderie, collaboration was highly valued in this organization. And the department that this leader was responsible for, it was for contracting high profile businesses to work with the organization. And part of the leader's role was cultivating relationships in that space to bring people into the organization as clients. So that's kind of where we saw this leader. The leader's profile was a community builder profile, very relational. And so here's some of what we saw. Team members really liked this leader. He had very good one-on-one relationships with each person. Each person on the team that he led felt understood and heard by him. He was very good at nurturing community relationships and cultivating relationship with these key businesses. He was a very good connection farmer that way, going out and cultivating. He said he liked to plant seeds and then watch them develop. And he was also very good about gathering input from his team members and really taking everybody's point of view into account as he was looking for and making decisions for the group and setting vision and setting goals. He was really about trying to make sure that everybody had a voice on the team and had a voice in feeling heard and understood. Some areas that he had opportunity in was that he was slow, because he liked to gather input from everybody, he was slow to come to decision. It wasn't comfortable for him to lay down the law and make a decision without having consulted with others. And also, as a relational profile style, he really had an issue with conflict, and he tried to avoid conflict wherever possible. And because he avoided conflict this way, sometimes he allowed conflict between team members on his team to continue without being resolved. If the team members couldn't resolve the conflict on their own and came to him for support resolving the conflict, often that conflict lingered because he didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. He didn't want to put himself in a situation where he was at conflict with one or the other party that was involved. And so a lot of conflict remained on his team, a bit unresolved. What happened is that we came in and started working with this team, put the whole team through the discovery process, and they got a better language to communicate and work with each other. There were a lot of ahas. No wonder this person behaves this way. I can totally see this behavior or that behavior. Our discovery tool allows people to get some common language around how these behaviors show up, what they look like. And so it really allowed the team to have richer and better conversations from a more neutral place. There were, as people, we make sense of things by building stories. And a lot of the stories that we build about other people are difficult, are not generous stories. And it's part of our hardwiring is to watch out for danger. And so a lot of times the stories that we craft about other people's intentions based on behaviors that we see are not very generous. And so this gave the team a way to describe and understand behaviors without some of the underlying story that they had created. And so we could separate the emotional story that people had created about a behavior to just the hardwiring of the behavior. It made the team take a more neutral stance with one another and gave us a baseline to help start resolving and rebuilding trust among some team members where it had really, trust had been violated. A few of the team members actually changed roles as a result of seeing how the rest of the team was wired, what the strengths were that were required on the team, and how the team was going to work together. A couple of team members actually changed roles to move to other areas in the organization where their strengths were going to be more appreciated, and it would be easier for them to work in their strengths without having to flex so hard to the rest of the team and to the role that they needed. So one team member did leave to find a role that was a better fit. And then the team leader also got some support in the day-to-day management of the team and in that making decisions in conflict area, where he was able to spend a lot more time and attention to cultivating those relationships with community, which was a strength of his, and he was able to lean on some support to handle some of the day-to-day decision making and the conflict resolution that needed to happen to keep the team intact and successful. So overall, the team was able to understand their strengths a little bit better. The whole of the organization was able to take a look at what they were seeing from this team, help place people in the right spot, and help people really play into their strengths as an organization. So what are these relationship profiles and what do they have in common? In general, relational profiles will tend to be, people with relationship focused profiles will tend to be very collaborative. They will tend to be amiable and engaging. These are people that are great with stories. They're good connectors. These are the ones that pull everybody together, that arrange the potlucks at their companies, that are looking for the social outlet right now where everybody's at home. They're the ones that are creating Zoom parties and trying to pull community together. They like to see what other people are doing, and they get a sense of satisfaction from contributing and being part of a community. So again, they're the people that are really driving those community connections. The more careful styles, so those relationship builders, facilitators, and adapters I mentioned before, will probably favor one-on-one, deeper interactions, deeper connections one-on-one, than so much being up in the front of a big room and being the ringleader, where engagers and community builders will be a little bit more comfortable with that. Facilitators and relationship builders may feel more comfortable being really one-on-one and really developing and cultivating a deep and meaningful relationship with people. Not to say that they can't be up in front of a room. That will be something, though, that typically those profiles, relationship builder, facilitator, adapter, once they've done that for a little while, will want to take some time to regroup. They tend to be a bit more on the reserved side. And so they'll want to take some time to regroup a little bit after those engagements. So what do relationship-focused profiles fear, and how do you alienate these profiles? So for the more The faster paced profiles, the engagers and the community builders, it gives them lots of anxiety to think about a public failure. So they're really afraid of both being taken advantage of, because they're the ones that are out front and talking before they're really thinking it through. So they often volunteer for things before they've really thought through what the whole of that project is going to be. But they also really fear failing in public and being known as somebody who wasn't able to make a commitment. They also can be really alienated by feeling excluded, by feeling like there is some sort of unresolved conflict in relationship, that there is something that they have done or that they see is a bit of a disconnect between themselves and somebody else on the team. That really and makes them feel alienated, and not feeling like they have what they need to move forward and be confident and see the results or see the actions that they need to take to be successful. So again, fearing that public failure, and then also not giving them the information where then that feeds into that fear of public failure. Often we see with these profiles, making sure that, you know, they have what they need, and that they feel confident about their ability to deliver will help them be set up for more success. Where your more careful results-focused profiles, the facilitator, the relationship builder, and the adapter, really hate sudden surprises and constant change in their routines and responsibilities. So you can kind of see being excluded and then a sudden change in responsibilities. These relationship-focused profiles could be really under stress in an environment where they're forced back into an isolation situation where they're not seeing the kind of people, they're not seeing and having experiences with people that they're used to having in a more office environment, where you can meet at the coffee pot, or you can meet at the water cooler, or you can go and have lunch with each other, or you can just bump into each other walking around in a hallway. So what's happening when we're all at home, those relationship, the engagers and community builders feeling excluded, like maybe people are meeting without them, could definitely be something that is eating at them, where this constant change of, well, what's the rule today and what's the rule going to be tomorrow and how long is the rule going to be in place, can be really stressful for those more careful focused profiles. In addition, they really hate having inaccurate information. Precision is really important to them. And they also really fear that conflict of interpersonal tension, and conflict is something that they really prefer to shy away from. They can be alienated by a lack of cooperation, but also precision, punctuality, loyalty, where they feel like people are being disloyal or not cooperative, that can really help make them feel isolated. Or being asked to come up with a decision without having time to really process what they are thinking or what they're feeling about something. So putting facilitators, relationship builders, adapters on the spot can feel really uncomfortable to them, and really deplete from the trust bucket that you build with them. And so helping to understand that if you're working with somebody with a more careful profile style that's very relational, helping give them time to process and think about their answers, give them the opportunity to feel like they are safe and secure, that they've thought of things, that they've thought of the risk before they're required to make a decision, will help them feel a little bit better. So again, our relational focused team members who suddenly find themselves virtual can really be having a hard time either feeling excluded or feeling like they don't have the opportunity to collaborate, or that they're maybe not getting as much information or information as quickly or in as much detail as they need now that we're in a more virtual environment for many of us. So those are things just to look out for with your relationship focused profiles. They're likely missing out on some of that one-to-one and human connection that they're able to get sort of by accident. In an office environment, it's much easier to come by. So what is it that they want? So these styles really are looking for, with that relationship focus, some fun and some variety in their day. How can they change things up a little bit? Who are they going to get to talk to? What's it going to look like? They really like to be cooperative with one another, build on and collaborate with one another. They like to feel a sense of stability and teamwork and trust. In an environment where people can't see each other and maybe don't talk as often, and where you only have structured formal meetings, because a lot of us now in a situation where there's an environment where we're a bit locked down, a lot of teams I've heard have moved to just, it's more formal, that process of meetings. And so we have more meetings, but I've heard people say, if I want to talk to this person, I can't just walk up to their desk anymore. Now I have to schedule a 15-minute meeting, ahead of time to do so. And it feels really unstable. And it can break down a little bit of that feeling of teamwork and camaraderie and cooperation. And so what I've seen teams do is figure out ways that you can get more informal with people. Do you have a team Slack channel or a Microsoft Teams channel, or some way that communication can happen in a less formal way than scheduling a formal meeting up front with people? And they're looking for a friendly environment. And again, that's a little difficult in the virtual world. If your environment is that you're by yourself or you're with your family and you're trying to have a friendly environment with coworkers, what can you do to establish that? And so some of the things that we've seen work really well, and one of the things that we're doing as a DNA behavior team actually, is that on our daily calls, and we talked about at the beginning of the series in our first webinar, one of the things that we do is a daily 15-minute call where everybody has a chance to go in a specific order. It's a very structured thing, but each person talks about what they have coming up that day, what they're excited about, what they need help with, and asking for support from other team members. It goes very quickly. While we have between 9 and 12 people on that call, depending on the day, the team leads come together and bring any information from their team that they need to bring forward. We do keep that call to 15 minutes. So it's predictable and it stays moving quickly. And even though we've added, what I was going to mention is what we've added to that call is a, what are we grateful for? And what we've found is just stating one thing that we're grateful for that day has really opened up to give us a glimpse into each other's lives and has made us feel much more connected with one another. Our team in Atlanta, the leadership team, is a very results-focused team. And so making this flex a little bit more relational and talking about things that we're grateful for has really given us a new way to connect. There's a lot more laughter. There's a lot more empathy on those 15-minute calls. It's amazing the emotion that you can hear on a 15-minute call when you just add one little bit of relational thing into a call. So for your relationship focused profiles, if you can do something like that, that provides more of this friendly environment, makes people feel more like they're in a team, gives them a little bit of variety. One day for a call while we were all on camera, people showed us their children or their dogs or their, something from their environment that they could share with other people to, again, give us just a quick human glimpse of this is what my workspace looks like, or this is, this is what my dog looks like. And it was a very relational moment. These are things that you can do to help these relationship focused profiles feel more connected to each other in an environment where many of us are completely isolated from one another physically. So again, for your faster paced engager and community builders, if you can encourage them to make decisions and clearly state their point of view, help them focus on what it is that they're trying to get to, what are the decisions that they're making, and what is their point of view, that can really help them reach their potential. And also encouraging them to focus just on one thing at a time. Engagers and community builders are the yes and people. They will think out loud, they will volunteer for things quickly, they want to connect people, they want to have a rich environment full of connection and collaboration. And so everything is possible to these people because everything can be done through, collaboration with other people. So helping them really focus on what's one thing that they need to do and what are the key things that they need to do to attain that goal can be really, really helpful to them to maximize their potential. For the more careful focused styles, adapters and relationship builders and facilitators, helping them, again, make firm decisions and state their point of view by encouraging them to speak up, giving them some time, maybe presenting them with an agenda ahead of a decision that needs to be made, and then encouraging them to state their point of view, bringing up to them, how do you think, what are you thinking about this? What are you concerned about this? What do we need to really consider in this decision? And encouraging their feedback that they may not volunteer without some encouragement. So also encouraging them just to share their ideas and take a stand to work on realizing goals. Relationship focused profiles are a lot about leaning into relationship and being collaborative and cooperative with one another. In a fully results focused team where you have fully relational team where everybody is relationship focused, it becomes a need for those people are close and they love working with each other and they can build good relationship, and people that work with those teams feel really heard and understood, but often they struggle a little bit to deliver on promises that they make or ideas that they have. And so encouraging them to share their goals, taking a stand for something, and then helping them realize those goals will be really supportive. And also to encourage them to be receptive to alternative things. A lot of times those more careful approaches will, like I said, they value stability, they value things not changing that much. And so encouraging them to be receptive to new ideas, helping walk them through how this new idea is similar to something that they've seen succeed in the past can also help them to perform better, to maximize potential, helping them realize what's changing and what's going to stay the same, to help them anchor onto something that they feel like is going to be steady and stay the same, can really help with those more careful profiles. So Lisa, I'm gonna, now that you've heard a little bit for all of you about what does a relationship style look like, where do you think you fall? So I'll let Lisa go ahead and throw that poll up there.
Thank you, Nikki. So for our poll, do you tend to be more results focused or relationship focused? And then you're right, Nikki, I love our daily calls. You know, I always look forward to whatever team member is grateful for. I mean, all of you should try it. You'll be surprised in how 15 minutes can bring to your team. It's full of surprises. I guess we're done with the second poll. Did everyone answer? Okay, good. And here are the results.
Yeah, so a lot of people kind of in between results and relationship. I would imagine that in a time like this where we're all a bit probably outside of a comfort zone and a bit stressed out, working in a different environment, that we all need a little more relationship than we're probably getting right now. And that may be swaying people to think that they're in between, but it is completely possible that we have just a lot of people in between on our call today. So thank you. We appreciate you sharing. And that leads me to the next case study that I wanted to share with you today about a relational team working together. So this was a nonprofit organization that was really struggling to maintain the organization. They were actually on the verge. It was an organization that was founded in 2002. They were at risk of disbanding because the members were kind of treating the organization more like a social club than a mission-driven organization. And so nobody really felt that everybody enjoyed being together. They were passionate about the cause, but they really were a little confused about what their real purpose was and what the mission statement was supposed to be, and the board was lacked a little bit of clarity about what their roles were supposed to be, what it was that the board was supposed to be driving, versus they also had a steering committee, and so there was confusion around the roles and responsibilities there. As new members joined the organization, it was unclear how they were supposed to interact with the group and what they were supposed to be doing. There was not a lot of things documented. or provided to new board members as they came on, or there wasn't, when people came on and were looking for how do we do things here, nothing was really documented because people were just great at collaborating and talking with one another. But again, writing that stuff down and getting it codified was something that they were really having a struggle with. And so small groups of people on this team were kind of starting to form silos. And so the organization was kind of losing, at the same time it was losing structure, tiny little pockets were starting to form. And there weren't really clear decisions that were coming out of the discussions and the meetings that they had. So meetings would happen and everybody would get a chance to talk, but then nobody was really clear by the time the next meeting rolled around, well, what was decided and who took action to do what, and where are we now in relation to that. So the team was really in a place where they were struggling to maintain themselves as an organization, although they enjoyed one another, they enjoyed the collaboration of being together, and they really shared a common purpose and some passion about the work that they were doing. So they called DNA Behavior, and we did a team discovery with them, and it became clear that there were a lot of relational focused team members in the group. And so those relational profiles were drawn to this work and this cause, but that lacked some structure to get the results that they needed, and even some confusion about what the results were that they were trying to get, because everybody kind of came together and said, yes, this is a good idea, yes, this is a good cause, yes, I want to be part of it. But there wasn't enough structure around what does be part of it mean. And so there were, people were sort of randomly assigned to do things, or some people would volunteer for something but then not be able to follow through on it. So when team members started sharing their profiles and started to get this common language around what people were good at, what they were passionate about, where they could really deliver value, and what their profile really looked like, they had much better conversations. They started to understand each other much better. And this happens a lot. I mean, this is a nonprofit organization where people were all coming together, we're all volunteers, but this happens in other organizations as well. If you have a really strong relational leader, as they hire people, they will tend to hire people that are like themselves. And so a lot of teams end up being skewed toward the leader's personality profile or toward the prior leader's personality profile. So you end up seeing teams that are unbalanced like this, where you've got lots of relational focus and only a few more results focused team members. And so on this team, it was leading to a lot of tension and some struggle to stay together actually as a team. So once the team was able to go through and see what their strengths were, recognize and validate that they were more relational, that they all did have passion for the project, what they did is they created some term limits for the board so that they had to be intentional about moving people up through the organization and out of the board, so that people really understood their roles and how long they were committing to something and what that commitment was going to look like. They clarified and documented roles and responsibilities that really needed to happen in the organization. They held one major event every year, and there were a lot of roles that needed to be filled to get that event to come off well. When they did this work, they went from raising $70,000 a year to over $400,000 a year for their cause. They have continued to use this structure of these roles and responsibilities and the term limits and some processes and procedures around documenting their meetings and some structure in the organization that they're still now using 10 years later. And they have never paid a resource in the organization. They have maintained their status as a fully 100% volunteer organization, moving with over 500% increase in fundraising activity. So a really successful outcome once they really understood what was happening and had some language around that. And then we're able to also recruit some additional people that were able to help them with that structure. So they hired out the DNA group and people working with DNA to help them come up with some structure. And then they were intentional about maintaining that structure going forward and recognizing what it was able to do for them and how much it helped them as an organization. it looks like, I'm just going to look real quick here in the chat. I say more about the silos on the team. Sure. So what started to happen is that small groups of people, two or three people would say, well, I think we need to do this. And then they would start taking action without really discussing with the rest of the group. And then another small group would start taking action without discussing with the rest of the group. And then if the group all came together as a whole, they would be going two different directions. And then there would be, again, because this is a highly relational team, they didn't want to introduce conflict with one another. And so what can happen in a team where most of the folks on the team are very highly relational is that it can slide into a bit passive aggressive because no one wants to do the conflict head on. People are trying to avoid having difficult conversations where they feel like there's going to maybe put a relationship at risk because they have to deliver difficult feedback to one another. And so what happened is people started avoiding one another and just trying to make the whole organization work 2 at a time or 3 at a time. And so things started getting compartmentalized. People weren't addressing issues, and things started to become just a little bit more difficult to manage as a whole group. And that's when they really started to recognize we're at risk of falling apart unless we get some external help. And they had the conversation, is this organization important enough to us that we need some help around the structure? And one of the board members was familiar with DNA and suggested that maybe that was a way for them to get some perspective on this, avoid interpersonal conflict a little bit, avoid having to be really confrontational with 1 or 2 people, but to start understanding in a more dispassionate way, in a kind of empirical way, here's how we're wired, how do we make the best use of this? It's kind of like looking at your asset sheet. What do we have? Where are our assets? What do we have to work with now? And how do we want to best use those resources to get to where we want to go? And oh, by the way, do we all agree on where we want to go? Because things were so informal, not everybody had the same vision of what the end goal would be and what a successful outcome would be. So that became the first thing that this external firm that was brought in started to, help with is, what do you want the mission of this organization to be? And not just, and again, to look beyond just the single event for this 1 year, but what's our 10-year goal? And so when you can build a mission or a vision out in the future so that you know that there's work to be done year over year to get to that vision, that was part of what was missing, is that they were a bit short-sighted about, we want this to be fun and we want this one event to happen. And what they were able to do when they started looking at a longer term structure was build a vision for what they wanted the organization to become, but it was a bigger vision than they could accomplish in a year. So it gave them a place to drive to, and it gave them some milestones to look forward to and to measure themselves against. Does that answer your question? Okay, great, thank you. All right. So when somebody that's highly relational needs to be more results driven, like we saw with that team, or that you might be seeing with team members that you know, or with family members that you know, you can ask that relationship focused team member to adapt by getting to their point more quickly. So when someone that's high relational is working with somebody that's high results focused, that results focused person is looking for the bottom line, is looking to make a decision, is looking to move on. Relational folks will want to color in all the detail and who's involved and what's it going to look like and how's it going to feel and what are the instructions. And your results focused counterparts may be overwhelmed with that much detail. So encouraging them to narrow down the focus of what they're talking about and get to the point a little bit more quickly can help them adapt to results focused team members a little bit better. Sharing their ideas, especially those more thoughtful relational styles, encouraging them to volunteer their thoughts. A lot of times relational folks especially the more careful ones, will have some really good input. And if they're working with results-focused team members, those results-focused team members may forget or may not even consider the emotional or social impact that some of their decisions are having, because they're just focused on a bottom line business number key metric result. They may be overlooking the impact that those actions are going to have on the overall team in terms of engagement, enthusiasm, connection, collaboration. And so encouraging your more relational folks to speak up with their results-driven counterparts to say, can we consider what this is going to do to our, our more relational team members, or this is what this feels like to me. It feels like you're not even considering our feelings in this. And while my feelings might not be the most important thing that you need to consider, if I don't feel like you care about me at all, my discretional effort is going to go down. And that's true of all people. If people don't feel seen and heard and recognized and appreciated by leaders, the amount of discretionary effort that they're willing to put forward for those leaders goes down. And so encouraging those relationship focused people to use that strength of knowing and having empathy to say, this is maybe an unintended result that I can see happening from your plan to drive this metric. Can we consider doing this as well? So not that we can't meet the metric, but maybe we need to soften the message. Maybe we need to have another meeting about that. Maybe it needs to look like this a little bit more. Maybe we need to soften that language. Maybe we need to give a little bit more time. Those kind of things that will feel more relational. Also asking for more information if they need it. So while your results-driven counterparts really like to leave out the extra detail and get to the point quickly, they may not provide enough color or enough detail or instruction for their relational counterparts. And so it's not intended necessarily by the results-focused person to leave out or omit detail. That's not how they're wired, so they don't tend to think that way. So instead of assuming bad intent from those results-focused team members, if you feel like as a relational team member, you're not getting the kind of detail or context that you need, ask for it and explain why you want that detail. Also, assuming positive intention from your more results-focused coworkers, and ask if the intention is unclear. Like I said, people that tend to be high results-focused, a lot of them will move very quickly or be very logical in the way they think, and will maybe miss out on cues, social context clues, emotional intelligence type clues that their relational counterparts key in on right away. It's really easy to tell a story that the results-driven team leader doesn't care about their team, is only focused on the bottom line, doesn't care about their people, when that may not be really true. And if you can assume positive intent, but ask about the intention if it's unclear. Do you mean for us to feel disrespected? Do you mean for us to not be included in this decision? Do you mean to not take into account our point of view on this? Can help that results-focused person understand the impact that they're having. And then again, for those relational team members to flex a little bit to more of that results focus, have them commit to actions and accountabilities that they're going to take. A lot of times there'll be a lot of talk and a lot of enthusiasm, but when it comes to writing down the key takeaways and who's gonna do what, that part is something that may not come as natural to a relational focused team member as it will to a results focused team member. So helping either pair with a results focused team member to document or commit to those actions, or asking that relational team member to flex a little bit to focus on and commit to some accountability, and ask for help where they need it. It's not to say that you have to assume responsibility for everything on your own and that you can't also be collaborative and do things through a group, but committing to actions that are going to get done and who's accountable for those actions and who's going to follow up and who's going to help can be very helpful to get the more relational focused team member working more with a results focused team member. So again, virtual team communication can be tricky, especially for more results-focused team members, especially if their results-focused counterparts are driving now that they have fewer distractions potentially. Maybe they have more distractions at home. So identifying what those styles are, communicating and flexing to one another, understanding what's important to both the relationship and the results focused team members, and figuring out how to either speed up or slow down communication to focus more on results or to focus more time on building relationship, having those moments where you talk about what you're grateful for, or where you mention something personal that's happening, or where you, you know, another thing that our team does is when a team member has a birthday, we all sing happy birthday to that team member. So just a couple of things that you can do. They don't take a long time. They don't have to be really difficult things to do, but they can really drive both results and maintain relationships and keep people engaged on the team. So we got a question here. I have someone on the team that gets impatient with me all the time, always pushing me to make a decision when I don't feel ready, and I feel like I don't have all the information. Do you have any guidance for me? Yes. So one thing that you can do is to help that person understand, I make my best decisions when I have some time to think about things. If you know a decision has to be made, so if you can ask them, hey, if you know that we're going to make a decision tomorrow about this thing, and you know that it's going to happen in our, you know, 10:30 meeting tomorrow, if you know today at 3 o'clock that you need a decision tomorrow at 10:30, can you tell me today at 3 o'clock so that I have some time to think about it, so that I can feel ready to come up with a decision, so that I can go research or find the information that I need. So ask for what you need, because that person is likely one of those faster paced, I will just come up with a decision. I will not, I can just talk my way through that answer right on the spot. And it doesn't occur necessarily to that person that other people don't and aren't comfortable the same way. So asking for what you need. Can you provide an agenda for me so that I know what's going to come up, so that I'll have time to make these decisions? The other thing is also asking, is it really critical that this decision be made right now? A lot of times you may not even need a whole day to think through the decision. Maybe it's just, can I just have 10 minutes by myself to think this through and not feel pressure, to pull that pressure off of me? And so sometimes just saying, can I get back to you in half an hour? Can I get back to you at the end of the day on that? And asking for what, and saying, I don't want to make a bad decision here because I'm feeling pressured. I'll feel less pressured if I can make this decision in an hour, in a half an hour, in 45 minutes. That can really be helpful. And you know, also indicating, I appreciate that these decisions come easy to you and that you're able to do that really quickly and on the spot. I will make a better decision for you, and I'll be more committed to the decision that we make together if I've had some time to think it through. And so I think just asking for what it is that you're looking for in that environment can be really, really helpful to you, and really help your teammates understand you a little bit better, and understand why you don't always volunteer an answer right away, and why you're hesitant to answer. It's not because you don't know what you think, it's because you're not ready to share what you think right away without having more confidence in what you're willing to say. So I would say ask for what you need there. Now you may run into somebody who is unwilling to, I had a leader who I said, hey, look, this was in another organization. I was leading a team of people that it was an international team. Many of them were translating his question from English to another language and then back again. And he said, I just need them to come up with answers faster. And I said, you need to count to 10. You need to give them more time to think. And he was unwilling to do that. What I was able to do then as an intermediary eventually, as I learned that he was so driven to get an answer when he needed it, was to try to get him to ask me those questions early, and then for me to say, let me get back to you. And usually, if I could say, I'll get back to you on that, and then go talk to my team, let them know that we needed an answer, give them a little bit of time, and say, you know, as soon as you can come up with an answer, I need it, but then just leave them alone to come up with that answer. That was helpful, to be a bit of that intermediary. So you may come up with somebody that is unwilling to slow down, but in most cases, decisions don't need to be made right on the spot. So that's what I would recommend. And I think Lisa's got one more poll question.
I got one more polling question. So for our last poll question, help us know what we need to focus more on our next webinar. Is it more case studies? More case studies on individual comparison differences, on leader and team member effectiveness, or more training on how to use the tools? So let's give a few more minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, while you're answering the poll, as I mentioned earlier, for those who are interested in knowing what their natural behavior is, I'll be sending an email invite for you to complete the discovery. It's pretty compelling, and it's just 10 minutes of your time. So I'm excited to go over the results with you. And I'll send it after the webinar. So Nikki, I think we have the results.
Great. So it looks like a little bit of everything, which is awesome. I love to see that. Definitely the case studies on leader and team member effectiveness. So we will be talking about that. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit about the science of our discovery, and then also some kind of what if scenarios. What if, like the one that we got today, what if my leader is pressing me for decisions before I'm ready for them? If you have more questions like that, we'd encourage you to send those in, and we'll show you our contact information here at the end. But we'd like to encourage those kinds of questions that we can answer in our next webinar, in the webinars that are upcoming in our series. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you. So for everyone's knowledge, Hugh Massey, our CEO, and Lee Ellis, they're in partnership for this book. It's a good read. It's available now in Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's a statistical research and data from millions of our clients. So while we're on lockdown, now we're just at home, let's grab a book and let's be productive. And the next webinar will be same day and same time. This time it's going to be Leon and Nikki. That's 3 p.m. April 22nd. It's all about the science and what we do. And just register and I'll send you the recording, even if you're not going to be able to make it live. So we're at the end of the webinar already. So if you have questions, allow us to help you with your virtual teams, and we're open for an exploratory call. Just book some time on our calendars, and you can go to www.dnabehavior.com. Also ask questions at inquiries@dnabehavior.com. So do you have any other questions? I guess all our questions on the chat boxes are answered. So with that, I turn it over to Nikki.
All right.
Do you have anything else, Nikki?
I don't. I will just thank everybody for joining us, and I hope that you found this interesting and informative, and that you'll join us again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.